canvas of Chance Olivia Reed stared at the imposing glass building that housed Horizon Technologies, her portfolio clutched tightly against her chest. At 32, she had expected to be further along in her artistic career, not barely making rent on her Brooklyn apartment while juggling commission work and barista shifts. This opportunity, creating a series of murals for one of the most influential tech companies in New York, could change everything. "Ms. Reed?" A polished receptionist greeted her. "Mr. Hayes' assistant will be with you shortly." Olivia nodded, trying to calm her nerves. Julian Hayes was something of an enigma in New York's business world. Brilliant, intensely private, and reportedly impossible to impress. She'd spent weeks developing concepts that captured innovation and humanity, the dual pillars of Horizon's public image. "Follow me, please." A sleek woman in a charcoal suit appeared, leading Olivia through security checkpoints and into an elevator that ascended with barely a whisper. "Mr. Hayes has allocated 15 minutes for this meeting. 15 minutes to convince a billionaire to entrust her with transforming his headquarters." No pressure. The elevator opened directly into a minimalist office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. A dark-haired man stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the cityscape. "Sir, Olivia Reed is here to discuss the art installation." Julian Hayes turned, and Olivia felt a sudden jolt of recognition, not because she knew him, but because his expression mirrored something she understood intimately: isolation. Despite his custom suit and commanding presence, his eyes held a familiar loneliness. "Thank you, Vanessa." His voice was deeper than Olivia had expected. "That will be all." As his assistant departed, Julian gestured to a chair. "Your proposal was unexpected." Olivia set her portfolio on his desk. "I believe corporate spaces need humanity. Mr. Hayes, your technology connects people, but these offices should reflect the souls behind the innovation." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, before he opened her portfolio. Olivia watched as he studied her concept sketches, abstract forms that suggested connection, rendered in vibrant colors against organic textures. "These aren't what the board requested." His tone revealed nothing. "The board asked for something forgettable," Olivia replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "You built Horizon to change how people interact with technology. Shouldn't your headquarters reflect that vision?" Julian looked up, really seeing her for the first time. His intense gaze made Olivia feel transparent, as though he could see past her professional facade to the doubts beneath. "Walk me through this central piece," he said, pointing to her most ambitious design. For the next hour, far beyond the promised 15 minutes, Olivia explained her vision while Julian asked unexpectedly insightful questions. As afternoon faded into evening, they moved from formal discussion to broader conversations about art's purpose in a digital age. "You've given me much to consider," Julian finally said, closing her portfolio. "It's late. My driver can take you home." "That's not necessary," Olivia began, but a glance outside revealed a downpour had begun. "I insist." Something in his tone suggested this wasn't merely courtesy. In the back seat of his sleek car, separated from the driver by a privacy screen, an unusual silence developed, not uncomfortable but charged with unspoken recognition. Two people accustomed to navigating the world alone, suddenly aware of a kindred spirit. "Why art?" Julian asked abruptly. "In a city that values practicality above all else," Olivia smiled. "Because we need reminders that we're more than our productivity. Even billionaires need beauty, Mr. Hayes." For the first time, Julian Hayes smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed his face. "Call me Julian." As the car stopped outside her apartment building, Olivia gathered her belongings. "Thank you for the ride, and for seeing my work, truly seeing it. The commission is yours," Julian said quietly. "But I have one request." "What's that?" "Show me how to see the world through your eyes." The vulnerability in his request lingered between them. "Not for Horizon. For me." Olivia hesitated at the open car door, rain falling just beyond. Something significant was happening, a threshold moment she could feel in her bones. "I'd like that," she answered truthfully. stepping into the rain with the strange certainty that her life had just irrevocably changed. One night's promise. 3 weeks after securing the Horizon Commission, Olivia found herself at the Pearson Gallery's annual gala, an event usually beyond her social circle. Her invitation had arrived with no sender information, though she suspected Julian's influence. She'd seen him only twice since their first meeting. Brief encounters at Horizon where he observed her preliminary work with that same intense focus, asking questions that made her reconsider her own artistic choices. The gallery hummed with New York's elite, their conversations a symphony of practiced charm and subtle positioning. Olivia, in a borrowed emerald dress from her college roommate, felt conspicuously out of place as she studied a particularly striking sculpture. The artist captured desperation beautifully, a familiar voice observed beside her, though I prefer your work. Julian stood there in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his presence immediately commanding the space around them. Up close, Olivia noticed the shadows beneath his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said, strangely breathless. "I own the piece you're admiring." His admission carried no pride, merely fact, though I rarely attend these events. "Why come tonight?" Olivia asked. His eyes met hers. "I saw your name on the guest list." They moved through the gallery together, Julian navigating the social currents with practiced ease while keeping Olivia beside him. She noticed how others approached him, with deference, hunger, calculation, and how differently he spoke to her, without the careful barriers he maintained with everyone else. Later, as the event wound down, they stood on the gallery's rooftop terrace overlooking the city lights. Julian swirled amber liquid in a crystal glass, his posture finally relaxing. "Do you know what fascinates me about your art, Olivia?" he asked. "You see beauty in broken things?" "Everything interesting has cracks," she replied. "That's where the light gets in." Julian studied her face. "Is that how you see me? Has something broken?" The directness of his question startled her. "I see someone who built walls so high he forgot what it's like to live without them." A silence stretched between them, taut with unspoken thoughts. "Come home with me tonight," Julian said finally, his voice low. "Just tonight. No expectations beyond dawn." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. "Why?" "Because for the first time in years, I want something that has nothing to do with business or obligation." His honesty was disarming. "One night where we're just Julian and Olivia, nothing more. She should refuse." Everything about this situation, the power imbalance, the temporary nature of his proposal, the professional complications, screamed caution. Yet something in his expression, a rare vulnerability beneath the controlled exterior, resonated with a loneliness she recognized in herself. "Just tonight," she agreed quietly. Julian's penthouse occupied the top floor of a historic building in Tribeca, its interior a study in restrained luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering cityscape, while carefully selected art pieces, including one of Olivia's early works, which she was startled to recognize, adorned the walls. "You own my painting?" she asked, approaching the small canvas she'd sold to a gallery 3 years earlier. "I acquired it last year." Julian moved to stand beside her. "Something about it spoke to me. I didn't make the connection until I saw your portfolio." Olivia studied him, this enigmatic man who collected beauty, yet seemed so detached from joy. "What are we really doing here, Julian?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "For years I've moved through the world like a ghost, building, acquiring, achieving, but never truly feeling." His fingers brushed her cheek. "You make me want to feel again." When he kissed her, Olivia understood that despite his wealth and power, Julian Hayes was starving for genuine connection. His lips moved against hers with an urgency that belied his controlled demeanor, his hands trembling slightly as they traced the contours of her face. What followed was a night of unexpected tenderness. Beyond the physical connection, which was intense and revealing in its own right, they talked until dawn painted the sky in hues of possibility. Julian spoke of his isolated childhood, the weight of empire building, the emptiness of success without meaning. Olivia shared her struggles as an artist, her fear of obscurity, her determination to create work that mattered. As morning light filtered through the windows, Julian watched Olivia dress with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "I meant what I said," he told her. "No expectations. The commission stands independently of this." Olivia nodded, though something had fundamentally shifted between them. "One night," she confirmed, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. In the elevator descending from his penthouse, Olivia leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. One night with Julian Hayes had shown her glimpses of the man behind the fortune, brilliant, wounded, searching. She'd intended to give him exactly what he asked for, a brief escape from loneliness with no strings attached. What she hadn't planned on was wanting more. Brush strokes of feeling. Olivia's brush moved across the vast wall of Horizon's main lobby, transforming the sterile space with sweeping arcs of color. 3 weeks had passed since that night with Julian, and true to his word, he had made no personal overtures. Their professional interactions remained cordially distant. She was the artist, he the client. If occasionally she caught him watching her work with an intensity that went beyond professional interest, she pretended not to notice. Ms. Reed. The cool voice of Vanessa, Julian's executive assistant, interrupted her flow. "Mr. Hayes requests your presence in the executive suite to discuss progress." Wiping her paint-stained hands, Olivia followed Vanessa through the building. The assistant's perfectly maintained appearance made Olivia acutely aware of her own messy ponytail and spattered overalls. Julian stood by the windows of his office, silhouetted against the afternoon light. "Thank you, Vanessa. That will be all." As the door closed, he turned. "The mural is exceeding expectations. Glad you approve." Olivia maintained a professional tone despite the memory of his hands on her skin. "That's not why I called you here." Julian moved to his desk. Retrieving an envelope, "There's an opening at the Westbrook Gallery next Thursday. The featured artist explores themes similar to yours." Olivia accepted the envelope, finding an invitation inside. "Are you suggesting this as research for your commission?" "No." His gaze was direct. "I'm suggesting it because you should be there." "For your career?" She studied him, trying to understand his motives. "Will you be attending?" "If my schedule permits." His neutral tone revealed nothing. The gallery opening proved to be a pivotal event for Olivia. Julian arrived an hour after she did, discreetly watching as she engaged with influential curators and collectors. By evening's end, she had 2 potential commissions and an invitation to submit work for an upcoming exhibition. "You arranged this," she confronted him as they stood before a particularly striking installation. "These people didn't just happen to be interested in my work." Julian's expression remained impassive. "I merely ensured your talent was noticed. The interest is genuine." "Why?" Olivia pressed. His answer came after a measured pause. "Because your art deserves to be seen." This became a pattern over the following weeks. As Olivia continued work on the Horizon murals, Julian created seemingly coincidental opportunities, introductions to collectors, invitations to exclusive arts events, a mention of her work in a prominent design magazine. He never directly acknowledged his involvement. But Olivia wasn't naive. On a rainy Tuesday, Olivia arrived at Horizon to find her workspace, relocated to a light-filled atrium previously used for executive functions. "Mr. Hayes thought you might benefit from the natural light," explained the facilities manager. "He's had special UV filters installed on the glass to protect your materials." That afternoon, Julian appeared as she was experimenting with a particularly challenging section of the mural. He stood silently watching her work for several minutes before speaking. "You're struggling with the transition here." He indicated the area where vibrant reds gave way to cooler tones. Olivia stepped back, surprised by his perception. "The shift needs to feel organic but deliberate. I haven't found the right balance." Julian moved closer, his presence affecting her concentration. "Like relationships," he observed quietly. "The most meaningful ones transform us gradually, almost imperceptibly, until suddenly we realize everything has changed. Their eyes met, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. "Julian," Olivia began, "what are we doing?" "I don't know," he admitted with rare vulnerability. "I told myself I was simply supporting your career, that my interest was professional admiration. And now? Now I find myself creating reasons to see you." His confession came reluctantly. "I think about you when you're not here." "Your perspective, your laugh, the way you see beyond surfaces." Olivia set down her brush. "You said one night, 'No expectations.'" "I meant it then." Julian's carefully constructed facade was slipping, revealing the complicated man beneath. "I didn't anticipate how difficult it would be to return to life without your presence in it." Neither moved, both aware of the precarious line they were walking. Olivia had sworn to herself she wouldn't become entangled with a client, especially one as powerful as Julian. She'd seen too many female artists reduced to footnotes in the biographies of influential men. "I should finish this section before the light changes," she said finally. Julian nodded, accepting her implicit boundary. "Have dinner with me tomorrow." "Not as your patron, not as Horizon's CEO, just as a man who wishes to know you better." Olivia hesitated, weighing professional caution against the undeniable pull between them. "Just dinner?" "Unless you want more." His gaze held hers. "This time, you set the terms." The following evening found them in a small, family-owned Italian restaurant far from the corporate world's prying eyes. Julian arrived without his usual driver, dressed in clothes noticeably less formal than his typical attire. Here, away from the trappings of wealth that usually surrounded him, he seemed almost like any other man. They talked for hours about art, philosophy, their divergent paths to New York. Julian spoke of his difficult childhood with new candor, revealing how his father's emotional absence had shaped his approach to success. Olivia shared her fears about artistic integrity in a commercial world, her struggle to remain authentic while surviving financially. "You've changed something in me," Julian confessed as they walked along the Hudson afterward, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. "Before you, I saw the world in terms of assets and liabilities, efficiency, return on investment." "And now?" Olivia asked softly. Julian stopped, turning to face her. "Now I see colors where there were only numbers, possibilities where there were only transactions." His hand found hers in the darkness. "I'm terrified by what that means." When he kissed her, it wasn't with the controlled passion of their first night together. This kiss held questions, vulnerability, the tentative beginning of something neither had planned. Olivia knew she was entering dangerous territory, falling for a man whose world operated by different rules than hers. Yet as his arms encircled her, she recognized that something extraordinary was happening between them, something that transcended the boundaries they'd both established. What had begun as one night was evolving into something neither had expected, a connection that was gradually, irrevocably changing them both. The portrait unveiled, the Horizon Technologies mural unveiling became the most talked-about corporate event of the season. Art critics mingled with tech journalists as Olivia's massive installation, an abstract exploration of human connection in a digital age, was revealed to unanimous acclaim. Standing slightly apart from the crowd, Julian watched Olivia navigate her sudden visibility with genuine pride warming his usually guarded expression. "She's extraordinary," remarked Thomas Blackwood, joining Julian by the windows. As Horizon's CFO and Julian's oldest friend, Thomas was one of the few people who could read the subtle shifts in the CEO's demeanor. "And clearly the reason you've been distracted lately." Julian's expression remained neutral. "Ms. Reed is a talented artist. Is that all she is?" Thomas asked quietly. "Because the Julian Hayes I know doesn't attend every minor gallery opening in Chelsea or rearrange boardrooms into art studios." Before Julian could respond, Olivia approached, radiant in a simple blue dress that contrasted with the elaborate attire of the socialites surrounding them. "Mr. Hayes, the Times art critic would like a statement about the commission," she said formally. Conscious of the professional setting, Julian nodded. "Of course." To Thomas he added, "Excuse us." As they moved through the crowd, Julian guided Olivia with a light touch at the small of her back. The past month had transformed their relationship into something neither had anticipated, not quite public, but increasingly significant. Weeknight dinners in out-of-the-way restaurants, Sunday mornings in Julian's penthouse, discussing books and art, late-night calls when Julian returned from business trips, his usual reserve softening in the darkness. Later that evening, as the last guests departed, Olivia found Julian studying a particular section of her mural, an area where fragmented forms came together to create unexpected harmony. You've captured something essential here, he said quietly. Olivia stood beside him, close enough to feel his warmth without touching. What do you see in it? Hope, he answered simply. The possibility of wholeness after fragmentation. Their eyes met, a world of unspoken feelings passing between them. Come home with me, Julian said, his voice low. Not for one night this time. The weeks that followed brought a deepening of their connection that surprised them both. Julian, always intensely private, found himself sharing aspects of his life he'd never revealed to anyone, the insecurities beneath his success, the loneliness of leadership, his complicated relationship with his own power. Olivia, fiercely protective of her artistic independence, gradually allowed Julian into her creative process, finding that his analytical mind complemented her intuitive approach. Yet as autumn faded into winter, complications emerged. Olivia's rising profile in the art world brought scrutiny to their relationship. At an important gallery dinner, she overheard whispers, sleeping her way into commissions, and Hayes's latest acquisition. Don't let them diminish what you've achieved, Julian urged when he found her alone on the restaurant's terrace. Visibly upset. They're not entirely wrong, Olivia countered. Would I have gotten the Westbrook show without your influence? Would MoMA be considering my installation if you weren't on their board? Julian's jaw tightened. Your talent earned those opportunities. I merely opened doors. Doors that remain closed to equally talented artists without billionaire boyfriends, Olivia replied, the word boyfriend sounding inadequate for what Julian had become to her. Their argument continued at his penthouse, evolving into the first serious conflict of their relationship. Julian, accustomed to solving problems with money and influence, struggled to understand why his support felt undermining to Olivia. She, fiercely independent, couldn't articulate why his help simultaneously touched and threatened her. The next morning, Olivia returned to her Brooklyn apartment for the first time in weeks, needing space to think. 3 days of silence followed, the longest they'd gone without communication since their relationship began. On the 4th day, Vanessa appeared at Olivia's studio door. Mr. Hayes requests your presence at his residence this evening. 7 o'clock, Olivia found Julian's penthouse transformed. His typically minimalist space now featured a makeshift gallery of her work, not just pieces he'd purchased, but photographs of her murals, framed sketches she'd discarded, even her earliest student pieces he must have tracked down. Julian stood in the center, uncharacteristically nervous. I've been thinking about what you said. What is all this? Olivia asked, moving slowly through the collection of her artistic journey. This is you, Julian said quietly. Your talent, your vision, your growth as an artist, independent of me or my influence. He approached her cautiously. I may have opened some doors, Olivia, but you walked through them on your own merit. This proves it. Tears filled her eyes as she recognized the truth in his gesture. I'm scared, Julian, of losing myself in your world, of becoming an appendage to your success story. I understand that fear, he acknowledged, taking her hands. My world consumes people, reduces them to functions. It's why I've always kept everyone at a distance. His voice softened. Until you. That night marked a turning point. Julian began exploring ways to support Olivia's career without overshadowing it, while she worked to separate her professional insecurities from their relationship. It wasn't perfect. His instinct to control and her need for independence created occasional friction, but something profound was taking shape between them. Masterpiece of Two Spring arrived with unexpected challenges. A hostile takeover attempt of Horizon Technologies thrust Julian into round-the-clock crisis management, while Olivia received a prestigious offer for a 6-month residency in Berlin. Their carefully balanced relationship suddenly faced practical tests neither had anticipated. "You should accept the residency," Julian insisted during a rare quiet dinner at her apartment. Dark circles under his eyes testified to the weeks of corporate warfare he'd been engaged in. "It's an extraordinary opportunity." "I know," Olivia agreed, though her enthusiasm was tempered by what it meant for them. "But 6 months is a long time." Julian's phone buzzed, another crisis demanding attention. "I have to take this," he apologized, stepping away to speak with his legal team. Watching him, Olivia realized how fundamentally their lives had changed each other. The Julian who had first commissioned her work, isolated, guarded, emotionally remote, had evolved into someone capable of genuine partnership. She, once defining herself in opposition to the commercial world he represented, had found unexpected depth in the man behind the corporate facade. Their relationship faced a critical juncture. Could it survive geographical separation and competing priorities, or was it ultimately a beautiful but temporary connection between two fundamentally different worlds? The answer came unexpectedly. 3 days before Olivia was scheduled to leave for Berlin, Julian appeared at her studio unannounced, looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. "I've stepped down as CEO," he announced without preamble. "What?" Olivia set down her paintbrush in shock. "Julian, Horizon is your life's work." "No," he corrected her gently. "Horizon was my shield against life, a way to prove my worth through achievement rather than connection." He moved closer, taking her paint-stained hands in his. "I'm not abandoning the company, just transitioning to chairman while Thomas takes operational control." "Why now?" Olivia asked, trying to process this seismic shift. "Because I almost lost Horizon fighting to keep control," Julian explained. "And in those darkest moments, I realized something profound. Losing the company would have hurt, but losing you would devastate me." His voice grew softer. "I've spent my life accumulating power and influence, thinking they would fulfill me. Then you showed me what actually matters. Julian, I would never ask you to choose—" "You didn't ask," he interrupted. "You showed me a different way to live. One where vulnerability isn't weakness, where connection matters more than control." His eyes held hers. "I've leased an apartment in Berlin, not to intrude on your residency, but to be close enough that we can continue building whatever this is becoming between us." Tears filled Olivia's eyes at this gesture, not of grand, expensive romance, but of genuine compromise and respect for her independent journey. Their Berlin months became transformative for both. Julian, freed from day-to-day corporate responsibilities, began exploring humanitarian applications for Horizon's technology. Olivia's residency produced her most acclaimed work yet, a series exploring the intersection of technology and human connection that critics hailed as revolutionary. They returned to New York changed, more confident in their relationship precisely because they'd proven it could thrive while supporting their individual paths on a snowy December evening 1 year after their first meeting. Julian brought Olivia to the rooftop garden of his building. Snow dusted the carefully arranged plants, creating a winter wonderland overlooking the city lights. "I've been thinking about what you said when we first met," Julian began, his breath visible in the cold air, "about art reminding us we're more than our productivity." "I remember," Olivia said, curious about his reminiscence. "You helped me see that I'm more than Horizon. More than acquisitions and innovations and market share." Julian took her hands. "With you, I'm simply Julian, with all my flaws and fears and hopes." That gift is beyond measure. From his pocket, he withdrew not a ring box as she might have expected, but a small, worn sketchbook. "This belonged to my mother. Before illness and my father's coldness dimmed her spirit, she was an artist too." He offered it reverently. "It's the only thing of hers I have. She wrote something on the last page that I never understood until now." Olivia carefully opened the fragile book to find beautiful, amateur sketches followed by a handwritten note. True wealth is not what you own, but what owns your heart. My mother died believing she'd failed because she abandoned her art for my father's world, Julian continued. I don't want either of us to make that mistake. He knelt, not with a diamond, but with something far more precious between them, vulnerability and truth. Marry me, Olivia. Not to join our separate lives, but to continue building this new life we've created together. Olivia knelt beside him in the snow, taking his face in her hands. Yes, she whispered. Not because you're Julian Hayes, but because you're the man who finally learned to see the world in color. Their story, which began with a business transaction and a single night, evolved into something neither had imagined possible. A partnership of equals who enhanced rather than diminished each other. Julian's wealth provided opportunities, but Olivia's perspective gave those opportunities meaning. Her artistic vision flourished, while his business acumen found purpose beyond profit. What the world saw as an unlikely pairing, the billionaire and the artist, was in truth the most natural of connections. Two people who recognized in each other the missing pieces of themselves, creating together a masterpiece more meaningful than either could have crafted alone.